So we're ready now to take a look at installing our Jupyter Notebooks on our Ubuntu 24.04 system. So again, we can make sure that we've created a project directory. We can move into that project directory, but we might have to make sure that we've got some other packages installed. So we can use the installer from Ubuntu to install Python 3 pip and Python 3 venv. With that done, we can then go through and create our virtual environment. But instead of running the script, we now source it in the Linux environment. So source, virtual, bin, and activate. With our virtual environment activated, we can install then our notebook. The notebook package will be installed, much as we saw within Windows, and we're then able to start our Jupyter Space Notebook. Again, the browser is going to open, and we're going to be able to work within that environment. Similarly to Windows, we can just type deactivate to close the virtual environment down. So come on, let's move across now to our command line environment and take a look at setting this up on Linux. We're going to be using, as we mentioned before, Jupyter Notebooks a lot, so we can be running it on Windows or on Linux, and we're now going to set it up on Linux. And welcome to my Ubuntu Linux system. I can go through to all of my applications and moving across to my terminal to give me the command line environment. I'm likely to use this many times, so I can also choose to pin the terminal through to my dash. Now the font is a little bit small, so we can use then Control, Shift and Plus to make it a little bit bigger. The process is pretty much going to be the same thing. I'm working in my home directory, but just as before, we can use the full path by using the $home variable and /, and this time we have to use /, into my PC EP directory to create my project directory. I can move into this very easily by using cd and escape and dot to bring up the last argument. Once here, I'm going to install some system packages with the apt installer. So apt install Python 3 and pip. We need the pip installer. And we also then need Python 3 and our virtual environment module. Oops, I forgot Python 3, so let's go back and add that into the second package. Hit the big enter key and then just Y to go ahead. So I know we didn't need to do this on Windows, it's just here on Ubuntu Linux we didn't have them installed. With those installed, we can then go through and run our Python 3 executable, -m venv, just as we did before, and then the virtual environment. We're creating our virtual environment, but instead of running the PS1 script as we did before, we can now go through and source from our virtual and bin for binary directory and the activate script. We can see, as before, we're getting the notification that we're working in the virtual environment, and we can go ahead then and install into the virtual environment the notebook package. Now again, there'll be many packages that are a requirement for this, so it might take a little while for it to install, but once installed, we can then fire up our Jupyter Notebook. So it's going to be Jupyter Space Notebook, and this will fire up the Jupyter server, but also open up my browser, taking me through to the server. Once we're here, it's going to be pretty much the same. I'm going to full screen my browser, and again I can use Control, Shift and Plus just to make the environment appear a little bit bigger, changing the view within my Firefox browser. From File and New, I can create, as we did before, a new notebook. The same questions are going to be asked when we go in. I can rename the untitled notebook. I'm just going to call it My here. and then we can go through and run our print command. And we should be pretty proficient at doing this now, shouldn't we? So print hello and shift and enter to execute the code. And there you go, we get hello coming back. We can go through and save our notebook. And we can also then go through and file and close and shut down our notebook. And we can see then in our browser that it is renamed, and then file and shut down to close the Jupyter server. I can close down my browser. Now, if we look at our virtual environment again, if I deactivate it, much in the same way as we would within PowerShell, just with the deactivate command, and then try and run my Jupyter Notebook, it's going to fail because it doesn't have the package installed. But if I activate the environment, and remember I use the source command to do that, there's a nice little shortcut. If I use exclamation mark and S, we can get back to my last command that began with S, which I know was sourcing the virtual environment. So exclamation mark S and enter. We can see the command that was run. My environment is up and running. And of course, I can fire up my Jupyter Notebook again. I can go back to my code, double click on it to open it, and I can extend my code with the if statement. If 2, and we should be very proficient on this as well. So if 2 is equal to 2, running our comparison, we can then go through and say it works. Shift and enter will run this cell, and we can see then that it is all looking very good. Additionally, if we want to, we could do more by changing the code and running all of our cells as before. But for now, I'm just going to go through and close down the complete environment. So from the File menu, I can save the notebook and then File and go straight to Shut Down. So this is now closing down my Jupyter server. I can close down my browser. We can see the server has been shut down, deactivate my virtual environment, and exit out of my shell.